Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. In the province of Ontario, the only legal and recognized land surveyor is an Ontario Land Surveyor, OLS. Your brother-in-law, who knows how to work a transit, just isn't qualified. I moved from the Toronto area back up north in 2007. In 2008, we bought a home on a 4-acre forested lot from the original owner. Through conversations with the original owner, I remembered him muttering something about how the neighbor to the north had their driveway awfully close to the property line. I thought no more about it until later that fall. Our neighbor's house was built slab on grade, and the builder must have messed up or not properly installed any drainage for the gravel pad. Every time it rained, they had water into their ground floor, an inconvenience to say the least. But not my problem. That is, until the neighbor rented an excavator and had a deep ditch dug all along our side of his driveway, dumping all of the rocks and spoil from the excavation onto our property. We also lost a number of trees, all mature black maple sugarbush trees. I was getting concerned. We had problems with a jerk neighbor in Toronto and ended up having to get a survey and put up a fence. I wasn't going to lose any sleep worrying about it this time. Call for a surveyor and get this over with. It turns out the OLS firm I called was the one that surveyed the development when it was built 10 years earlier. They had no trouble mapping out how and where the neighbor's driveway for over 100 feet now arced up to 12 feet onto our property. Never mind the rocks and dirt in the bush beyond that. I sent a registered letter with a copy of the survey and a polite letter to our neighbor. With registered mail, you have to sign to pick it up. They received it but did not respond. I waited a month and then sent another registered letter. That one wasn't picked up and was returned to me. Yeah, that should work. If I don't receive the letter, everything will just go away. In the way of explanation, the neighbor was a successful local businessman, and in smaller communities, some of them tend to think that they're a bit special and can make their own rules. I learned from the jerk neighbor in Toronto that there's not much point in trying to discuss things personally. We have a system. Let's use it. The next letter that's sent to them is from our real estate law firm. They know the right language to use and how to get someone's attention. Surprise! That one not only gets picked up, but we receive a letter from their lawyer. They freely admit that they're at fault and will make everything right. Except they don't. They don't do anything for the next 3 years. Absolutely nothing. I started receiving expert advice from some of my friends. SJK, you should fix it at your own cost and then sue them for that amount. Well, what if they claim they could have fixed it a lot cheaper? Or I did a bunch of things that weren't needed. SJK, you should charge them for all the trees they cut down and make them replace them. Yeah, but we do live in the forest and trees aren't really hard to find. In fact, we cut down trees that get too big too close to the house. It's not like we're in the big city. I decided to do nothing. After the angst and sleepless nights with the jerks in Toronto, I decided to just wait it out. After all, they've admitted fault through their lawyer. It's not like they can wiggle out of that one or change their minds. I learned that the neighbor's wife hates living in the forest and would much rather have a schmancy house in town. And with the water problem that has never been resolved, it just isn't as much fun as they had thought it would be. 4 years later, what I was waiting for. A realtors for sale sign in front of their house. I stopped and took a picture of the sign so that I had the phone number of the listing agent. I called them as soon as I got to work. Hi, this is SJK. I see you're listing a property at XKEX. You may not be aware of this, but your client is trespassing on my property. Of course, the neighbor couldn't pretend this wasn't true, and now we had to clean up the mess to our satisfaction before the property could be sold. Oh my! The 5-yard dump trucks ran for close to 3 weeks. They hauled load after load after load of topsoil. It had to be dumped, spread out, and compacted. The gravel driveway had to be dug up and pulled back to the property line, and all that filled in as well. At the end, it was all seeded with the understanding that it would eventually go back to being forest. SJK, is it okay now? Not quite yet. It looks like there's still a lot of work to do. All the weeping tile, rocks, and piles of dirt were removed as well. Not a job easily done and very time-consuming. Don't get mad. Wait, then get even. The next one is an entitled people story. I had always dreamed of living by the lake, and when I found my perfect house, I knew I had to make it mine. The house was nestled deep in the woods, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city, and came with its very own private beach. It was a dream come true. However, things quickly took a turn for the worse. I noticed people using my beach as a shortcut to get to the lake. Initially, it didn't bother me too much, but then they started setting up camp on my property. I politely asked them to leave, but they just laughed and ignored me. One night, I was woken up by the sound of loud music and shouting. I got out of bed and looked out of my window to see a group of people having a wild party on my private beach. I was furious that they would take advantage of my property in such a way. I tried talking to them, but they just shouted obscenities and told me to mind my own business. I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. I contacted a lawyer and discovered that my property was, indeed, private. I had the right to do whatever I wanted on my property, and I didn't have to tolerate anyone else's behavior. I decided to install a camera with a good zoom feature, hoping to catch them in the act. The camera captured everything, including their drug use and disorderly conduct. I made multiple copies of the footage and decided to confront them. I drafted a message to the main offender, attaching a preview of the footage and warning him not to trespass on my property again. I made it clear that I would turn the video over to the police if they continued to ignore my requests. To my relief, the party stopped. I never received a response from the main offender, but I didn't care. As long as they stayed off my property and respected my privacy, I was content. I was able to enjoy my private beach in peace, and it was worth the effort. However, a few weeks later, I received a call from the local police department. They informed me that a group of teenagers had been caught trespassing on my property and vandalizing it. They had also been caught with drugs in their possession. The police had discovered the footage I had captured on my camera and were able to identify the main offender. He had been arrested and charged with vandalism and drug possession. The news was shocking, but also a relief. I had always hoped that they would stop their reckless behavior, but I never imagined that it would lead to their arrest. I felt vindicated that I had taken action to protect my property and privacy. The ordeal had been a learning experience, and I was grateful that it had come to an end. Update. A year later, I received another call from the police department. They informed me that the main offender had been released from prison and was now living in a halfway house nearby. They advised me to be cautious and keep an eye out for any suspicious behavior. I was apprehensive but grateful for the warning. One day, as I was enjoying a peaceful afternoon on my private beach, I noticed a familiar face. It was the main offender walking towards me. My heart started racing as I tried to figure out what to do. I knew I couldn't let him on my property, but I didn't want to be confrontational. He approached me and started apologizing for his past behavior. He told me that he had turned his life around and was trying to make amends for his mistakes. He handed me an envelope and asked me to open it when he left. He then turned around and walked away, leaving me confused and bewildered. I waited until he was out of sight before opening the envelope. Inside, I found a handwritten letter from him. He apologized once again for his past behavior and expressed his gratitude for me not turning him over to the police. He told me that his time in prison had made him realize the error of his ways, and he was now working hard to turn his life around. He included a check for a substantial amount of money as a way of making amends for the damage he had caused. He also promised to stay away from my property and to respect my privacy from that day forward. Reading the letter, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was glad to hear that he had turned his life around and was making amends. On the other hand, I was still apprehensive about his presence in the area. In the end, I decided to accept his apology and the money. I appreciated his efforts to make things right and move on from his past mistakes. I also knew that I had taken the necessary steps to protect my property and privacy, and I could feel secure in that knowledge. As time went on, I occasionally saw the main offender around the neighborhood, but he always kept his distance and never caused any trouble. I hoped that he continued on his path of redemption and that he would never cross the line again. The experience had taught me a valuable lesson about standing up for my rights and protecting my property. It also showed me that people can change and make amends for their mistakes. I felt a sense of closure and peace, knowing that I had done what was necessary to protect my home and my privacy. The next one is a petty revenge story. I work at a hospital as a lab technician. Our hospital site is near the city center and quite old, so there are no real parking lots and not many parking spaces available. Between students, patients, hospital workers, and people coming and going for different reasons, it's nearly impossible to find a spot after 8 a.m. Since I work in a small team, only 4, and the evening shift is also on call for any emergency, we have one reserved parking spot. There's a sign saying it's only for on-call lab technicians from our department, and there's a chain with a padlock in front of it. It is located between a fence and another building's wall, right next to our lab. There is another team in the lab, and we sometimes let them use the parking spot when we have others available or when we come using public transportation, but otherwise we don't share it. So the story. A few weeks ago, I started doing the evening shifts, usually from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., but it can last much longer. I was also on call, so I took my car to the lab. I arrived one morning near 9:45, went to the reserved parking spot, but the chain was down and the spot was taken. At first, I thought it was someone from the other team, but I didn't agree to share the spot with anyone, and I didn't recognize the car. So I decided to park just in front of it, horizontally, so that my car wouldn't be on the road. That way, the other car was stuck between the wall, the fence, and my car. At first, I was thinking I would move it as soon as I found the colleague, and he agreed to let me have my spot. But it turns out the car didn't belong to anyone from the lab. One tech had witnessed by the window a lady parking in the spot around 9:40. When he opened the window to tell her not to park there, she just said, "I'm in a hurry, I won't be long," and left walking fast. I checked if there was a phone number left under the windshield that I could call, but there was nothing. So we decided, you know what? My car is fine where it is. It's not on the road, it leaves enough sidewalk for pedestrians to be safe, and it's only blocking her. I don't have time to go find another parking spot at this hour, which would probably be at the end of the hospital site. Plus, I have a sticker on my car saying it can park at some places in the hospital for emergencies. And the day went on. I had almost forgotten about it until 4 p.m. when someone called the secretary. The lab's phone number was on my sticker. It was a lady wondering why there was a car parked in front of her. Turns out she was also a hospital worker from another department who had arrived late to work and couldn't find a place to park, so she took the chains down and parked there. No idea how she got rid of the padlock, but it was old and weathered, so it might have just broken. She had just finished, I won't be long my ass, and now she wanted to leave but couldn't. First, the secretary, a nice woman but not known for her calm temper, berated her by the phone. Then she connected the lady to our phone, where a colleague did pretty much the same. Next, another colleague went out to check on my car. According to said colleague, she looked relieved as she thought he was going to move my car. He just told her it was illegal for her to park there, and now she had to wait for me or we'd call to have her towed. Meanwhile, I was in the middle of a complex procedure that required being in a white room. A sterilized room with controlled atmosphere, sterilized blouse. So I couldn't just leave what I was doing like that. So she waited. And she called twice more to complain that she needed to leave. And twice she got berated by my colleagues until one of them told her to stop, or they would involve the hospital security and actually get her towed. In the end, I got out of the white room at 5:30 p.m. My colleagues and I thought it was enough, so I changed myself as slowly as possible, took the time to get everything in order and let everyone know in the building I was going out for 5 minutes, and finally got out. She was visibly pissed as hell because it was almost 5:45 p.m., but the threat to get her car towed might have stuck because she didn't say anything except a passive-aggressive "thank you." By the time she could get out, it was almost 5:50 p.m., so she waited a little less than 2 hours. It could have been worse since I ended my shift around 7:30 that evening. So far, no one else has parked in the spot except us. The next one is an entitled People Story. To give some context, I must say that I'm an IT engineer with toxic family relationships. I did cut off my father, uncles, and aunts, yet I keep in contact with my cousins and their children, which somehow I treat as mine, as I had none, and I'm an only child, therefore is the closest I got. I always prioritize success over relationships, so I'm single, and through the years I felt that my cousins' children weren't mine, therefore I wanted to raise one of my own. It took me some time, but finally I adopted an 8-year-old kid, as those usually age out of foster care. I love the experience of raising a kid, yet I have had to deal with some entitlement from my cousins. It turns out that every now and then I usually spend some money traveling with my cousins and their children. Yet this year, for obvious reasons, I need to save money to get all the stuff my son would need, and I'm planning to go big, the best of the best I could afford. I just explained this to my cousins and told them this year our trip together would be canceled. They said nothing, so I thought they understood the whole situation. Anyway, I wanted my kid to socialize with my cousin's children, so I invited them all to a get-together party, after about 2 months when my son felt comfortable enough. And somehow all of the kids were so mad and refused to play with my kid. He just sat in a corner and tried not to cry, but he did. I just talked with the kids and they said he was not part of the family and they deserve more, as he is adopted and they, as my family, were entitled to the trip to the parks in Florida. I was in shock and asked them where they got that from, and they told me how their parents have told them the reason why I took their trip was my son, who comes from the streets and isn't even family. I was fuming, so I told them all to leave. I had a Zoom meeting with just my cousins who told me that their children must come first, and I told them they made me realize my son comes first. So I canceled their college funds, their private school tuitions, and just told them that if my kid is not part of their family, neither am I, and they were cut off. I have been called unreasonable, but I think my son comes first, and I made the right decision. The next one is an entitled parent's story. Background: I'm a 35-year-old father of 2 boys. I have PTSD due to time spent overseas and have physical scars to match the mental scars. I have an incredible wife who knows me and knows what situations I should avoid. My children are amazing, but this story revolves around my youngest son and my service dog. Jay, my youngest son, has autism, and we share a special bond because some things that set him off also put my teeth on edge. Spike, my English bulldog, is my service dog. He's well-trained, lazy, judgmental, and overall uninterested in anything he can't eat. He's also very in tune with Jay and my emotions and will provide a distraction when we get overwhelmed. Basically, he's like, "Oh, you're stressed? Here, scratch my butt, you'll feel better, and I'll get attention. It's a win-win." The story: my family recently moved to Texas. Because we now live very close to an amusement park, we got memberships. Shout out to the park for being amazing when it comes to special needs. This particular park in Arlington, Texas, has a special program for autistic people. They have rooms set aside to chill at if you're overstimulated, so you can relax, go back out, get overstimulated again, and round you go. With Jay, we also don't have to wait in lines. This is a huge thing and the cause of this story. The park has a pass that lets you skip most of the lines, and they charge an arm and a leg for this. However, with that pass, you still end up in a line of the hundreds of people that also have that pass. Jay gets no lines at all. We get a special pass and we go in through the exit. The worker signs the pass and we go on the ride. Jay has a favorite ride, the log ride. There have been days when we would ride the log ride over and over, then eat. We also have the food pass, which we pay for, then go back to the log ride. On this day, T, my oldest, and Jay wanted to go on the log ride. So we made our way to the exit and left wife and Spike in the shade because someone has to stay with him and bulldogs and rides don't mix. As we were going in the exit, a woman started screaming at us. I have absolutely no hearing on my right side, thanks high pressure wave, so I didn't consider it worth turning my head to listen. Now, because we ride this ride almost exclusively, the workers on this ride know us by name and sight. Jay even talks to them, which is rare. We go in, show the pass, sit, and ride. This time, though, Tabitha, I'll call her Tabitha because Karen is overused, the woman who was screaming at us as we were walking in through the out, made her way to where the speedy pass ends at the ride, where a red shirt will check her pass and let her go on her way. She didn't even want to ride. She just wanted to yell about us going in through the exit and how we are abusing the system. Now, anyone that looks at Jay can see he's in a world all his own and wouldn't be surprised if he's literally reading the future or talking to aliens. He's awesome. The red shirt tries to calm her down. T is getting upset because he's a normal 9-year-old and adults yelling is uncool. Jay is making his excited sounds and waiting for the log to stop so he can get in. We get in, and as we float away, we still hear Tabitha screaming. The ride ends, and we exit. We figured we would never see Tabitha again, but obviously, as I'm pointing this out, it didn't go that way. Tabitha appeared like a dark brother after making the sacrifice, Elder Scrolls reference, hooting and screaming. She was screaming that just because Jay is an R-word doesn't mean we get extra rights. The screaming causes Jay to let out his super screech. Now, anyone that knows autism knows that autistic kids have superpowers. In Jay's case, it's a supersonic, ear-shattering, high-pitched screech that makes your eyes swim and makes it feel like things in your head are moving that shouldn't. This whole time, Spike was lying on the ground in the froggy position as bulldogs do, just looking at Tabitha like she's a rabid dog but not worth getting up for. As we were being screamed at, I saw two officers approaching from behind Tabitha. I smiled. My smile must have broken Tabitha because she hauls off and kicks Spike. This flips my switch because now my family is literally under attack, and I start to react. Before I could make contact, Tabitha was already in the air being held, carried, half dragged away while being cuffed. Now in front of me is a well-dressed and pissed-looking officer. He tells us he heard the screech and started heading to it because they thought a ride broke or something bad happened. I take the time to unflip that switch and examine Spike. He's limping and crying. I feel his hips and feel that his hip is dislocated. I jokingly ask the officer to walk away and let me get some. He, of course, has no humor to this, but also can tell I had a career. He asked what happened, and we all explain what happened from A to Z. He asks if Spike is a service dog. I say yes. He smiles. I'm not in a smile mood, but it catches me off guard. He explains that in Texas, intentionally injuring a service dog is a felony. By this time, park security arrived and issued a trespass order to Tabitha. The officers ask if I want to press charges. I look at Spike and look back. Yes, I say. Tabitha and her tiny mouse-like husband start to freak out as Tabitha is loaded onto a golf cart. We hop on a cart too and leave to go to the vet. The vet fixed Spike and all is well. We went back the next day with Spike in a stroller. No one batted an eye and everyone loves the bulldog in a stroller. I let people pet him. He's a hoot, and the park is an amazing place. I've been contacted by the investigating officer and have given depositions. I may have to testify, but I look forward to sitting on the bench with Spike on my lap. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.